Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, and today I am very honored to introduce our guest, Aliza Freud. Hi, Aliza.
Hi.
So happy to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And Aliza is the founder of SheSpeaks.com, which is an award-winning platform for influencers. And she really makes, it's for women, right? And you make women's voice really be heard out there, what they want, what they need, and how to provide that. You're also a host of a podcast and a show where you highlight influential women. And we're going to talk about processes. We're going to talk about how you use processes, the importance of processes. And Aliza, you were an executive at American Express work. That's your corporate life, right? Came from American Express before you started your own business. So you know the comparison between corporate world, your startup, building your own business. And we're going to talk about the difference in processes and what it means to have processes and procedures for a small business.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. But before that, I would love for you to share with our audience about SheSpeaks and tell us more about it, what it is all about, who do you service, who is part of your community. When we talked, I was so impressed to hear the number of followers that you have, the number of people in the community. So definitely would love to hear more about that.
Sure. Well, SheSpeaks is an influencer marketing company. We actually started doing influencer marketing before it was called influencer marketing. Back in the day, we actually launched and really started going in 2008. And as you said, that is after my career at American Express. And the company really started as this idea of, brands, which I was at a very large brand, said that they cared very much about what was going on with female customers. They wanted female consumers to use their products and services, but I felt like they were getting it wrong frequently. I would look at the marketing that was geared towards women, and I would think, oh my gosh, I could help these companies be so much better doing this. So the original idea for SheSpeaks was that we were going to help brands better understand what was going on in the hearts and minds of women. So it started out as a research. We started out as a research platform doing quantitative and qualitative market research for a variety of different brands. We worked for skincare brands. We worked for food brands. And basically they would come to us and say, we want to know how to talk to women about these products. We want to know what they think of our package sign. Anything related to feedback from female consumers. So we started basically as a panel, a research panel. We invited women to join to complete, we have a CRM platform that was sort of, the engine behind everything we did. And so women would come, they would join, they would hear about us from other women, other women on the panel, and they would sign up to participate in our studies. And what we figured out, though, very early on was that the women who were signing up they would tell us, oh, I have a blog. And, remember, this is back in 2008 when blogs were, still relatively new. They started probably in the earlier part of the 2000s, but, not necessarily being used for marketing yet at that point. And we started getting worried. We thought, well, wait, all these women are signing up and they have blogs. We don't want them to write about this product that we're asking them for feedback on. We want them to just give us the feedback privately. But then we realized, oh, wait a second, maybe there's an opportunity. And the opportunity was from a pretty early stage that we could ask people to potentially write about these products and services that we were working on, and not just utilize our community and our panel for research, but also maybe for marketing. And then it evolved. So that's really how it evolved. It came from a need. like the fact that we were seeing that all of these women who were joining were now were then what you wouldn't call, you'd call them bloggers, but now you call them influencers. They were the earliest influencers, and we realized there was an enormous amount of power behind what they were doing. They were gathering, like they had all these women and other people following them, wanting to know, well, what products do you use? What do you like? And so we realized that that was the opportunity and the future. So we started to evolve. And over time, now, if you look at our business is very much about influencer marketing. Companies come to us, our clients come to us, and their goal is to basically figure out, how do we create content, work with these influencers to create content, and then get that content out to as many of our target customers as possible. Everything we do is grounded in insights. So we still have the DNA of what is really going to make a female consumer, a woman who is the target, be interested in hearing more about your product or service. But that is, the majority of what we spend our time doing now is working to create this content that resonates with female consumers, and really to amplify and distribute that content on social media.
That's great. And you also have a community, right? You have a community
Yes.
that every woman can join.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody is listening to us right now and they want to join, so it is SheSpeaks.com, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that any woman over the age of 18, we don't, we are focused on, making sure that we are, marketing to women over the age of 18. Anybody can come and join on SheSpeaks.com and let us know what your interests are. And hopefully we can give you opportunities to, depending on, what your background is and your social media presence, all of that, we can give you opportunities to try products for free, or to get paid, depending on whether you have a following and you're an influencer. So it's meant to really be a way for us to help women in a variety of ways, from being heard to earning income, all of that.
For sure. I joined the community, and it's because I like to give my opinion. And that's why I feel like it's a way for me to participate in surveys and give my opinion about different things and hear about new products. I mean, it's always good to be in the know. And so there's a lot of opportunities here, whether you're an influencer or you're just a consumer and you want to know more about different products, etc. So
Yep.
Great. All right. So now let's talk. Well, first of all, before we talk about processes, we need to give a shout out to our mutual friend, Mimi Banks, who introduced us.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Mimi was actually a client of ours. When Mimi was at L'Oreal, she worked on Lancome at the time that we worked with her, and we did some influencer work for Lancome. We worked on a bunch of other L'Oreal brands as well, and I was always struck when working with Mimi with how well she understood the space. And this was, back probably in 2014, I want to say, 2014, 2015, around there, before she started her own social media company, which is doing amazingly well. But she was someone who understood influencer marketing at a time where not a lot of people understood it. And she was on the brand side. So it was even more impressive that she understood this space. She intuitively understands social media quite well.
Oh, absolutely. She intuitively understands marketing and social media very well. So our listeners, go check out Mimi Banks at Mimi B Social, and you'll see what she does and how she helps clients. So thank you, Mimi, for the introduction.
Yes.
Okay, Aliza, let's talk about processes. So tell me, one of the things that you mentioned is the difference between an established company like American Express, right, that has all the procedures in place. And it's also a financial institution, so you have to even have more procedures, and you have to be very strict on that. And a startup that is starting up, or maybe even a business that is 5 years into their journey. what is the difference in terms of the processes and procedures? And before you answer me, I want you to also think about, what I hear from clients sometimes, especially those that came from corporate America, is like, oh yeah, I came from this place where we had all these procedures and SOPs and everybody, is like so strict and they think that that's what they need to create for their business, but it doesn't jive. It's not the right gradient, right? It's not the right thing to do. Right. So
yeah.
What's your perspective on it?
Okay. It's a great question. And it is very different. So having worked at a place like American Express, as you said, I was there for 10 years, and you come into a company like that, and it is incredibly important to understand how the process works, right? It is incredibly important to understand in any role you take, what is the process here? And what I would say is I got very lucky. In my job at American Express, my first job there was to basically start creating processes where there weren't any. And it was a marketing re-engineering role. And the goal was to think about how we were already doing marketing and think about how you could re-engineer the process if there was already a process, which in many cases, as we already said, in established companies, the size of a company like American Express, there are a lot of established processes already. So the question there was to come in and say, okay, how can I tweak this to make it better? How can I put something maybe else in place as part of this process to make it better? But you were already dealing with an established process that you were refining. Right? The re-engineering process, but refining it to make it better. And they're in a company, a large company, having a very well thought out process that has been refined over time is incredibly important. But when you're in a startup, right? When you go and you start a new organization and you're starting a new company from scratch, you have to be really smart about understanding, all right, how do we create a process that maybe is not what it's going to be after 10 years of having a process in place that you refine and you make better over time, but one where it's more flexible. I think that's the key difference in a startup environment versus being in a very large company. You need a process in a very large company that has predictability, that will work for you, because you already know what your service is. You already know what your product is. You know how you're going to incrementally do something to make that process work better. But you already are pretty certain on what your product or your service is. With a startup, you may have the best idea for whatever your startup's going to be. You may have in your head, this is exactly what it's going to be. But what you need to recognize in a startup environment is the need for flexibility. So you start with, okay, this is what I believe I'm going to offer. And you put a process together and you push it out, right? But your main goal in a startup is to also understand, how are people reacting to my product or service? And then as you see people reacting, you get smarter and smarter and smarter about what your product and service is. And then therefore, what are the implications to your processes? And so that's the thing that I think is a key difference for me, is that in an established organization, you're way more certain, even if you're working, and I worked in new product development for a period of time when I was at American Express, but it's not new product development that comes from nowhere. You know generally what industry you're in. You know generally what the parameters are for what new product you're going to offer and what new service you're going to offer. And there's a process, right? With a startup, it's way more like the wild, wild west, right? It's like, okay, I know generally the space I want to be in, and you can design a process for that, but it can't be etched in stone. It has to be something that you say to yourself, I'm going to put this out there and I'm going to take a step back and say, how are people reacting to this so that I can make my product or service better? And then as part of that, you need the process put in place to get to more predictability. So that's for me, the value of strong process is once you say, okay, this is what I know I'm going to be doing. And I now need a good process in place. So I have a more and more predictable, I can get more and more predictable about my outcome and have it be at a high level on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. So it's the fluidity, it's the purpose of the process when you are working with when you are a startup is basically to have some frame of reference, whether this is working or not. And that's the important part is that what I see is that sometimes when you start a business and you go, okay, well, let's just see what works. And it's kind of like throwing spaghetti against the wall, right? And see what sticks. Mm-hmm. But if you don't document it and if you don't look at it as a process, it's hard to really evaluate what works and what not. But if you make it too rigid or that's the way it is, then it's harder to change. So I think what you bring it up is so important in terms of the purpose of why do you have a process, right? So you have the startup and you document the process in order to be able to have people follow it, but also to evaluate if it works or it doesn't work. Then you have the big corporation, which already has things established and it is the incremental change. And then you have the middle, which we tend to work with those clients in terms of, you already got past the startup point. Maybe you documented some, maybe you didn't, but now you're not still not a big corporation like American Express, but you want to get there, or you want to get maybe not as big, but you want to get to a bigger corporation. So that's the stage where you really need to document what is working, because to your point, at that point, you should be able to figure out what works and what doesn't work and streamline things.
Yes. Yes. And I think you're touching on this too, is the value of having a process, and they're different. Even in a startup, you're going to have different processes for different parts. It's not just like one process, right? Each thing that you do to move your business forward, you have to have a process in place. And I will say that having process in place is what allows you to scale. And if you don't have a process in place, I think it becomes much more difficult to scale a business.
Absolutely. And I know you are very powerful, you are powerful, but you're very passionate about entrepreneurs and especially women entrepreneurship, etc. So what would be some advice that you will give to some of the entrepreneurs that are listening to us right now and go, okay, I want to make it to the next level. I want to scale my business, but I'm in the grind of the day-to-day operations. I don't know if I can do it or not. What are some of the advice from your experience, for what you have seen, because you're dealing with so many entrepreneurs? What would you say some of the keynotes of that?
Well, I'm a big believer that in order to really scale your business, and this is hard especially if you're starting out as an entrepreneur who's bootstrapping, right? Where you're not coming in with several $1 million of investment to start your business, which most people, some people do, but most of us do not, right? You don't start out with that. And I think though that the hardest transition for an entrepreneur, and I see this with so many entrepreneurs I talk to, is going from being a doer to an enabler. And we become, I was a VP at Amex. I worked my way up over 10 years, and I became at the point I left the company, I was the VP. I had, people reporting into me for years at different levels within the organization. And it doesn't matter when you start a business, you go back to being a doer. You go back to being, okay, this stuff just has to get done. Right. And I think though, then what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, and you asked about advice for entrepreneurs. So I would say be very mindful of what you are doing versus what you enable other people to do. And it was hard for me as a entrepreneur who was very passionate about her business. You do care about your business in a way that, is it's very intense. Like it means a lot to you. It's a part of who you are. It becomes very difficult to let go, right? But it is more critical it is incredibly important to learn how to, as you start to build and as you start to move forward, to find people who can help you and can take on some of the doing so that you can scale your business by becoming more of an enabler. If you're stuck in the business, the day-to-day of doing all the time, it becomes more and more difficult to see the big picture and be able to scale. And I will say that was a hard transition for me. I'm going to, I've been doing this now for a while. As I said, I've been really doing it since 2008. So I've had some years of hard learned lessons. And I will say that is the one thing that I wish that I had kind of thought about my training at American Express a little bit more and earlier on, to say, okay, how do I pull myself out of the details and the doing so that I can learn how to find people to do these things and then work to quickly scale my business. So that is the one piece of advice I would give is depending on where you are in your life cycle of your business, right? There were things I wish I would have known 6 months. I would have, started to find people to help me 6 months in, and then a year, and then 2 years, and then 3 years in. Really think about what you can allow other people to do so that you can start to take more of that 50,000, 100,000 foot view of your business, because that's what allows you to scale.
Absolutely. So what was the point, the pivot point for you? Like, what actually made you go from a doer to an enabler in your business?
Smart team members, really. I mean, I had been very lucky that I was able to hire some great people very early on, and competent people want to do their jobs, and they want you out of the way so that they can do their jobs. And that's how it should be. And you can't take that stuff personally. If you hire good people, clear the path for them to do their jobs and get out of the way, because let them do the thing that you've hired them to do. And then you focus on, okay, what can I do to now bring this business to the next level? That's what you should be thinking about. Hire great people, make sure you have the processes in place. They can help you form those processes. They can help you make the processes better. I mean, I can't tell you how much it's so funny because, both of my daughters have, been helping us a little bit in this summer for my company. And they will ask me questions about things that are details that that's in the doing of the business. And I will frequently say, I don't know, but here's who I know, here's who you go to ask that question. And one of my daughters said to me, what do you do? I said, because if you don't know the answers to any of these questions I'm asking you, what is it that you do? And I said, well, my job is to allow other people to be successful. And that means that I have to be able to operate out of the details and focus on, okay, what is the next thing? What are the things that we need to be doing to bring the business to the next level? What are those elements? And that's, that's the hard one lesson, especially for an entrepreneur, because it's your baby. You don't want to, you can be very much wanting to retain that control. But if you don't give up that control, your business can't scale to the level that, that it really deserves.
Oh, for sure. For sure. A lot of things, a lot of times I hear from entrepreneurs that they know that they need to hire somebody, that they feel like they're doing it all themselves, but they are kind of at a tipping point where they go, well, if I hire somebody, especially somebody who is good and I have to pay them that much, I am almost at that level of business, but I'm not there. But I cannot service them myself, but if I hire somebody, it's going to be different. It's like that point. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. So what do you say to entrepreneurs that come up with that consideration?
Look, I understand it. I very much understand it because it's very, you take it very, most entrepreneurs that I have talked to and who are, building businesses, they care very much not only about the work that they're doing and their mission, whatever it is they're trying to do with their business, but also when they bring people on, that responsibility of making sure that you can pay them, making sure that, if you offer healthcare, that you are, that's a response. It's a huge responsibility, right? To be offering that to your employees. And I think the way that I have learned, again, hard won learnings, is that you are much better off. You have to know at what point can I support having this person, right? Do I have enough money to be able to support having this person on my team? Don't get ahead, like it's a balance, right? You don't want to get too far ahead of your skis, as they say, right? Out ahead of your skis, because, you could suddenly have to, lay people off. I mean, it's a difficult thing to do, but if you don't take a chance at a certain point, right? And there has to be some experience in there that allows you to know, okay, I know that I have this new contract we signed or this amount of business that's come in, and I can take it. I can comfortably say, even though it's a risk, I'm going to bring somebody on to help me. When you get to a point where you can do that, you then need to just allow that person to do their job so that you can do the next thing that's going to ensure that you can hire the next person, right? So that's what I would say, is that if you're going to go, you have to go with your gut. And for me, gut has always been a mixture of taking my experience as well as my intuition and making a decision. Can I bring somebody on? And, how do I bring that person on? But then get out of their way, like hire the right person and get out of their way so that you can do the next thing to bring the next people on, because that's your goal, right? If your goal is to build a business, you need to get to the point where you're bringing people on so that they can start doing the work and you can do your job, which is clearing the path for them.
Absolutely. And, I heard it several times throughout this interview, and I can agree more with you, is the get out of their way, right? Because that is the key to empower people, because you want to hire people that are ambitious, that are successful, that are going to get your business to the next level, but you have to get out of their way. Yes. And of course, going back to the beginning of our conversation, in order for you to get out of the way, you have to do the knowledge transfer, right? I mean, you have to have well-documented processes and procedures. You have to have very clear job descriptions. You have to have a very good culture built in terms of define what's your mission, your vision, your core values. So everyone knows where they stand, right? There are no surprises. And then you go, okay, here are the rules of the game. Let's play and go, as opposed to then be in their way and they're trying to run to the goal, and then you're just blocking them, right? So, right. But you have to give them very clear, precise rules. And those are the processes, the procedures, the rules, the job descriptions, etc. And part of the rules is get out of the way and let them go with it and produce and set the expectations. So,
yeah,
absolutely. Well, Aliza, this has been great hearing your perspective. And you're definitely, you have your own show, you have a podcast, you interviewed many, many women entrepreneurs, right? Very successful. And I'm sure everything that you share with us is a combination of what you went through, because you're a very successful entrepreneur yourself, and all the data and knowledge from your clients and people that you interview. So in closing, can you share with us what inspires you?
A lot of things inspire me. I'm someone who just really very much loves learning from other people. You mentioned that I have the podcast I do. I also have a LinkedIn Live series where I interview women about their careers. So, for me, I am I'm very much driven by our mission, and the company's mission has always been to build a stage for women and amplify women's voices, that's how we started. It's what our mission still is. It's evolved, right? We started as a research company. We're now really focused on doing marketing and influencer marketing and social media in particular. But our mission is still the same, which is that we feel very strongly about the space we're in. We believe in the power of women kind of coming together and having women. We are big believers that if women come together and we actually collaborate with one another, and even if we're in the same industries, even if we maybe see each other technically, we work with influencers who could see one another as competitors, but they don't, right? Because they recognize that as women, if we come together and we share knowledge with each other and we share tools and resources, that we all just get better. And that's one of the many things I love about working in the space that I'm in. So what motivates me is really this community that we've built of amazing women, many different partners that we get to work with who are also passionate about the same thing. And the fact that we get to serve this community every day. That's kind of the motivation for what we get up and get to do every day.
That's beautiful. That's totally beautiful. And thank you for sharing. And that's probably can be another topic for another podcast, is like the motivation and what drives the person, right? In terms of having a strong mission and believing in that mission. And you definitely convey that. So thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. And for our listeners, the best way if you want to ask Aliza questions or get a hold of you, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
I'm on the social platforms. I'm on LinkedIn, Elisa Freud on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Elisa Freud on Instagram. And also if you want to reach out to me, feel free to reach out to me. You can email me at Aliza. So it's ALIZA at SheSpeaks.com. I'm always happy to engage with people and be a resource. That's what we're here for.
Awesome, Aliza. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.